I've cooked up somewhat of a banger, you could say. A pretty interesting and very useful workflow on n8n that you can use for your chatbots, essentially for anything where you in the end need to use a RAG database or a vector database, such as Qdrant in this case. Now, what have I created here? It is a system that automatically creates vectors for your vector database. Now, a lot of you will know this is quite difficult if you've tried using it before. You have Qdrant here, and you have your different collections that you have for each of the different vectors. And so finding these is a bit difficult. It's not always that intuitive, and it's definitely a huge hassle going through a huge document with maybe 100 or maybe even 1,000 or a million in some companies' cases, different vectors that need to be added into this database so that the chat model gets just a far better answer, so that it can query far easier and get, when you're, for example, a customer typing into a website on a chatbot, far better information, far more accurate information that's far less hallucinated, which less now, but it's still a huge issue, maybe the number one issue for pretty much any chat model, ChatGPT, etc., everything that's out there. Hallucination is one of the biggest issues, and RAG databases are supposed to fix this. However, creating a good one is very difficult, or at least time consuming. And so what I've created now is a way, or I don't want to say I've created it. The idea and the basic process was given to me by someone else, who I can't remember their name right now. I apologize if you're seeing this. However, I've refined it a bit, and this is very good because all you do is take your document that you want, it can be however long you want, that you want put into the RAG database. And you can do this in different steps as well. Like, for example, here I've created a little knowledge base just for a certain part, like a sub part of a company that I'm currently working for. And you put it into your Google Drive, which then checks here. You have it here, customer support, customer support. And then this, what it does is takes that and puts it into a real file that can be read by n8n, essentially. This then puts it through a code chunk, which essentially all this code chunk does is check for what is essentially this. And in normal people language, this would be backslash, hashtag, backslash, hashtag, and maybe white space after it. And so if you get your knowledge base, for example, improved by ChatGPT, you send it into ChatGPT or wherever and say, hey, just take this, all this text, put it into a document, maybe not all at once, do it in steps, I'd suppose is better. But in front of every point for a RAG database, and this is still a manual step you have to do, unfortunately, but you can automate this at some point as well. For a RAG database, put these four signs essentially in front of every major point. Every point that should be its own vector. ChatGPT does that, so you can see here there's a bunch of different vectors that are being created alone for this document. Then you go on, and what it does here is it splits it into 56 items in this case, but it splits all of the different chunks into different items. And so this then is brought into a loop. The loop, first off, goes into an agent, an AI agent. In my case, I chose GPT-4.1 mini. It's relatively cheap. I might switch to GPT-5 mini, etc. soon. It looks right now like it's better and cheaper, so that might be a good idea. However, all it does is have this prompt, takes the exact chunk, the vector that was created from the entire document, puts it right in here. And then the prompt for this is, here's a chunk we want, blah, blah, blah. Please give a short context for this chunk. Now, this is interesting. This is essentially the creme de la creme, you could say. Now, a vector database already is very good for an AI system. However, it can still make mistakes, and you can do some stuff to improve this. In my opinion, the best thing you can do to improve how an AI gets its information from database is to add an AI context into the chunk itself. And that's what this does. It goes through the entire document, looks at what the context is directly around the chunk that it's given, the vector, and then puts a little um, context around it. Just a little explanation like, okay, this is what it's for. So you get an even better result. Now it puts this into the fields exactly how you want it. So first the chunk, the vector, and then ChatGPT's output. And then you have your Qdrant vector store or whatever vector store you use. Pinecone is also good. Qdrant is a bit better, I would say, for bigger companies, especially where you have to adhere to privacy policies, but you can use whatever you want. And then here you just have your standard, Qdrant, insert documents for me, I call it test collection 2.0, the, um, the collection that I use. And yeah, essentially very simple. You have these things as well. I mean, if I need to explain them, I can just put in the JSON file if you want. If you want, afterwards, I can add the file in so that you can copy this for yourselves and add this into your own business. However, here the fun begins. You now, let's say we have this document. I'm just going to be using this one. I'm not going to be transcribing the entire one because that will take a while. However, if you check right now, test collection 2.0, there is no vectors present right now. All I got to do is execute the workflow from the beginning. It goes, gets a document, gets a file, splits it here into the 56 different items, and then it starts doing its magic. It loops over and over, getting every single vector that there is. Now I'm going to stop it after we get the third one. Perfect. Stop it here. And now you can see what it's actually gone through in this process. This is only the output that is given and over, you can see from ChatGPT. And then here you have the Qdrant vector, how it's being added into the actual database. But does this work? Actually, that's of course the most important part. Well, let's reload it quickly. And yes, of course it did. Now we have a vector database already. I mean, this right now is still a small one, but if we add every single document that we need, this will go a lot faster and a lot better. So you can see this is the part from the document itself. And then here you have this little thing that's also defined um, in the edit fields node. You can see here we got this little buddy here that makes it easy to see what is the actual vector from the document that we want in and what is the context given by ChatGPT. And that you can see here quite easily. ChatGPT gives a lot of context. This is in German because it's a German company, but you can do this obviously in any language. And yeah, we instantly now got a vector database for whatever case you want to do. You can add your company knowledge base in there, give it to ChatGPT and say, hey, just mention this in like another node in another workflow and say, hey, this is my vector database from Qdrant, blah, 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 blah. Answer all customer inquiries perfectly, done. It now has all of the data it needs to do that and can look through that perfectly. Now, to top it all off, I want to add a little extra thing, just because I thought, why not? I, in the beginning, had a huge time creating if I go on collections, creating a collection itself. For me, for some reason, when I started with Qdrant, I didn't have a create collection button here. I couldn't start a vector database. I had to go through a lot of effort on actually creating one. So I fiddled around a lot. I used for the most part ChatGPT to find this out, but I found a very good solution. If you open VS Code or any other code editor and type in this exact code, obviously you put your URL here for the URL part, which is simply I'll highlight it for you, all of this, that's your URL, and the API key given to you when you create your first, not collection, but your entire cluster. And then all you do, add the URL, add the API key, the name of what you want the collection to be called. In my case, I called it test collection 2.0 or test collection 2.0. And then all you have to do is run this file, run it in whatever way you want. And suddenly it says, okay, done, finished. You reload the collections page and you have a collection here. It is genuinely the easiest way I've been able to do it. You can create your own collection. However, what I suggest is, especially for the vector store, if you want more input, more tokens that it's been able to go through, I would use text embedding 3 large. And that is exactly what this code is made for. The size is 3072, which is exactly for number 3, the large, and the distance is distance cosine, which I mean doesn't mean much to any non-coder. I'm not a professional coder myself. This is all originally ChatGPT generated. I'm not anywhere close to being that into coding. However, I feel like with AI, very soon we're not going to need to be that good at coding anyway. So I'll take my chances for now. And yeah, that was it. You put that in, you get your very own Qdrant collection, and then you can instantly begin with this workflow on n8n, begin creating and filling up that collection with your own vector database. Be free to use it for whatever you want. I would be super happy if you guys give me feedback on this video in general, how it was. Maybe it was a bit long. Maybe I could have cut some things down. I decided in the end to go shirtless. I know a lot of people that I talked with after from my friends and family or also colleagues said, oh, maybe, you want to think about that if you're running about it. I don't care. I'm going to do it. I think it's fun and a bit different, which I want to be, I want to try. So yeah, please give me any feedback for this video and let me know, especially if you liked it. And if you end up using this, how it worked for you and what you used it for. That would be really cool to know. Just for me to know that people are actually using the stuff I'm giving them and genuinely getting a benefit from them. And yeah, if you want, let me know if I should paste or send in the file for this workflow, the JSON file simply, or if you also want the code that I have here along with anything else to be pasted into the description or also given as a separate file. And yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I will see you all very soon. My next video should be coming up in a few days, hopefully. And yeah, that's all. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.